Hi, this is John Rosenall. We're going to be talking today about composition in your photography, how you arrange the elements in your frame. Composition, it is that arrangement of elements in the frame to guide the viewer's eyes, to create balance, tell your story, and evoke emotion. It matters because it's the composition that makes people stop and look. Your technical quality, your exposure, focus, white balance, those things, they're baseline, but it's the composition that really grabs the viewer's eye. Key message here, these are guidelines, though, what we're going to be talking about. They're not unbreakable rules. The best photos sometimes break these rules intentionally. First one we're going to talk about is the rule of thirds. With the rule of thirds, you divide the frame into a 3 by 3 grid. Most cameras, iPhones, Google phones have this as an overlay. So when you're looking at your screen or through your viewfinder, you might have that grid right there visible, which makes it easy to follow the rule of thirds. So you want to place the key elements along the lines or at the intersections of those lines of that grid. For example, the horizon, uh, subject's eyes, the main point of interest, especially if you can put them right on the intersection of those lines, horizontal and vertical. That really draws the attention and it creates some, dynamic balance and tension. It also avoids everything appearing boring like a mugshot. The next one we're going to talk about briefly is the golden spiral or the Fibonacci spiral or golden ratio. This is based on the golden ratio, which is 1.618 to 1. It creates a logarithmic spiral found in nature. The nautilus shells that you see, galaxies, flowers, a lot of these incorporate the golden ratio. You'll find those in those elements. So with this golden spiral, you place the main subject at the tightest part of the eye of the spiral and align supporting elements along that curving path. And it works because it guides the eye in a natural, flowing, organic way. It's more dynamic and subconscious than straight lines. Feels harmonious because it mimics nature. And the orientation, it can be flipped around, rotated, flipped to fit the scene, clockwise, counterclockwise, any corner start. That's irrelevant as long as that spiral is in that Fibonacci ratio. Comparison to two-thirds, some people call it, or comparison to the rule of thirds, some folks call this rule of thirds on steroids because it adds that flowing movement instead of the static grid points. Another technique in composition is leading lines. You use natural or man-made lines like roads or fences, rivers, shadows, architecture to draw the viewer's eye towards the main subject. It can be straight, can be curved, can be diagonal. Curved oftentimes feels more organic, and it works because it creates depth and movement and directs your attention. An example would be a winding path to a leading distant mountain or a person, railroad tracks converging to infinity. Another technique is using symmetry or using patterns. An example of symmetry would be to center the subject for a mirror-like balance. It might be architecture or reflections in water, faces. And then patterns would be a repetition of shapes or colors. They create harmony and or rhythm. And it works because it feels calm, it's powerful, graphic, great for breaking the rule of thirds on purpose. And the perfect reflection in still water or symmetrical building facade, tiled floor patterns, these would be examples of symmetry and patterns. Framing. Use elements in the scene like a window or doorway, archways, branches, tunnels to frame the main subject. It works because it adds layers, it focuses attention and gives context. For an example, a person photographed through an open window or under tree branches. Fill the frame. Get close. Make the subject dominate. No tiny subject lost in clutter. Get right in on that. The macro photography is one way that we get close and fill the frame. Or on the other side, negative space, you use lots of empty space. We call it negative space for minimalism and emphasis. It works because it eliminates distractions, forces impact. Balance and visual weight. Distribute elements so the page doesn't feel lopsided. You want it symmetrical or asymmetrical balance. Larger, darker, brighter objects have more weight, and it works because it creates harmony or intentional tension. Depth and layers. You got foreground, midground, background elements for 3D feel. Use wide apertures for blur or small for sharp. If you want everything in focus, use a small aperture. If you want to blur the background uh, and just emphasize the foreground or the midground, use the larger aperture. But overlapping objects creates atmospheric perspective. And it works because flat photo is kind of boring. Depth immerses the viewer. There's a rule of odds too, odd numbers of subjects, 1, 3, 5, instead of 2, 4, 6, or 8. Feels more natural than even numbers. Simplify, remove anything that doesn't support the story. So here's some takeaways. Composition is about intention. Ask yourself, what story am I telling? Where do I want the eye to go? And then go out and practice. On your next shoot, pick one of these techniques. We're going to show you some examples here in a minute. Pick one technique and stick to that for that shoot or for the next few shoots. So you feel real comfortable, whether it's leading lines, rule of thirds. Rule of thirds is the easiest one to start with because again, you probably already have that grid in your camera. So we're going to flip over now and pick out some photos from my library and give you an idea of how some of these techniques are put to use. Okay, we're in my library now, and we're going to start looking at some examples of the techniques of composition that we just talked about. So let's look at this pelican here for our first subject. And this is an example of the rule of thirds. Now, one of the things I like about Lightroom is in their toolbar, they have different grids that we can put over the photograph to crop it to different composition elements. And so I'm going to pull up the overlay here, and the default is rule of thirds. So you can see this grid here with 9 equal sections and broken up into rows of thirds and columns of thirds. And the pelican is on one of the vertical 1/3 lines, and kind of his beak face area is at the intersection of one of those lines as well. So that's a good example of how the rule of thirds works. If we looked at this photo otherwise, uncropped to the rule of thirds and put him right in the center, you can see, yeah, it's just kind of a mugshot looking thing. But if we crop it to rule of thirds, it gives it a little more dynamic feel. Creates a little more tension. He's got room over here to move, that kind of thing. So that's a rule of thirds with the pelican. Let's pick another one here. These are the Blue Angels flying above Virginia Beach. And we put that grid on there, and you can also see that the bulk of this mass of these airplanes is on the vertical line here of the first third, and we got intersections on 2 of these jets as well. The other thing is when you have something moving through the image, you like to have plenty of space in the direction in which it's going, so it has somewhere to go. So again, this is another example of rule of thirds. This is a kind of a vertical shot down from a drone on ocean waves crashing on a white sandy beach, green Gulf water here in the Gulf of Mexico. This is down in Naples, Vanderbilt Beach area. So this is another example, as you can see, rule of thirds. The water section of this is on the bottom third, the waves in the beach, top third. We also have repeating patterns here. As you can see, the waves, even though they're not exactly the same, they are kind of, you got the
kind of a hump thing there going across there, like a repeating pattern. Gives you a little bit of a dynamic feel to it. Now let's see what we got here. We got another rule of thirds here as well. You can see the boats are kind of right on that line there, the bottom third line, and with the sky taking up the top two thirds. But we also have leading lines here with the hulls of the lines of the hull lines that kind of guide your eye through the photo into also what I would consider repeating patterns. We've got these booms shooting up into the sky and the boats themselves. So that's another principle is that you can stack these techniques. You don't have to just have only one in your photograph. So we've got leading lines, we've got rule of thirds, and we have repeating patterns here in this photo. This is Quoddy Point up in New England and Maine. What we're looking at here is we've got the rule of thirds, bring up the quadrant, and what I would consider the main element of this photo is, of course, the lighthouse, and we've got that on the third vertical line here, and this intersection is fairly close to the where the glass is. And let's see. This is a photograph at Schnormeyer Gardens in Gambier, Ohio, a private garden with lots of elements in it. But this is his black swan with the red beak, and he also have a Japanese bridge here with in red. And what I did in this picture to create a balance is to bring out the red and to make everything else monochrome. So the swan kind of balances with the bridge, and we also get, let's see, yeah, rule of thirds here. You can see the swan is positioned right here at the intersection of these two lines near the head. And then we also have over here standing crane statues. I think they're bronze. I can't remember what metal they were made out of, but again, rule of thirds there. Here we are in Saguaro National Park in near Tucson, Arizona. And if we get a grid on here, we can see fits in the rule of thirds. We can move this around a little bit to get it more exact. And this is lying right on that line, that 1/3 line there. I think this also might fall into a golden spiral. We'll have to take a look here. So here's your golden spiral. And if we move the saguaro over just a hair with that, we can position this arm of the saguaro right in the center of that spiral, and it kind of guides our eye around, and it picks up all the beautiful sky and other saguaros in the background and other cacti and growth in the foreground there as well. It gives you a little sense of movement. So 2/3 or rule of thirds, and also this also fits in with the golden spiral. Okay, we're going to shift gears a little bit here now. We've got to fill the frame. This one is completely filled the frame with these pelicans that are dashing off, and it also gives you a sense of motion. We also have the repeating patterns with their wings repeating, our beaks all in a row there, and so it's a filled frame. Whoops. And I believe we also have a rule of thirds. If we go back to that grid, I might have to pick that up from the toolbar. This is a golden ratio. This is a golden ratio grid which is a little different than the rule of thirds because it uses that ratio of the 1.1 to 1.618, I think it is. But so the middle grid there is a little bit smaller than the top two. If we go back to our crop overlay and pick up thirds, there we can see the bottom of the pelicans is right on the bottom third line, and the beaks are pretty much on the top line. Works real well there. Here we've got another third with a horizon. Let's get our, there we go. You can see the horizon there is right on that top 1/3 line, and the foreground of the landscape is in the bottom. Okay, I'm going to give you a couple more here with the rule of thirds. This horizon is right on the top third, so you get the sky occupying the top 1/3 and the waterscape and the beach in the bottom two. You also have some balance here because if you look at the sun here and this circular wave pattern, they're kind of balanced. They kind of replicate each other, and then we also have the leading lines coming into that particular section there. So let's let me get into something different here. I'm going to give you a couple examples of a balanced photo. So the balance here is the light area with the sand. This is in sand dunes in El Paso, or in South Padre Island of Texas, and the white sand balances against the dark sky. You also have the white here balancing the dark, but you have some dark in here too. And with the dark up here, you got some light area. So that's an example of using balance in your photo. As is this, you got the two big rock structures here. You got the dark one over here on the left, and then you have a lighter one over here on the right. Kind of balance, give you some symmetry in that photo. I think we might also have a rule of thirds going on here. Let's see. Yeah, you can see the top line goes right across those top two rock structures. So let's see what else we got here. Spiral. So I'm going to give you some examples of the golden spiral again. This picture here features this lone tree with its roots exposed, just hanging in there on top of this rock all by itself. This is a real good example of how that spiral works. Let's bring that up. And here we can see the tree is right in the dead center of the golden spiral, and it just kind of takes your eye all the way around the photo, incorporating this really nice lit up area here where the sunrise is just coming up and lighting up the inside of this rock. So that's the golden spiral there. What else we got here? Here's an example of another golden spiral. Let's bring that up. And now this one, we're going to have to flip it around a little bit. As we said earlier, it doesn't really matter where it is exactly, which side it's coming from, up top to bottom, bottom to top, side to side. But you can see here in the middle of the spiral, not exactly dead center, but pretty close to it, you've got the sunrise. And then, of course, the eyes guided around the bridge structure here in the water. We also have a leading line here with the bridge. This is the 7-mile bridge looking towards Marathon. Marathon Key. This is down in the Florida Keys. Um, and this pretty much the eye leads your eye right to that sunrise and that golden hour. This is another example of golden spiral incorporated here. Here we go. We're right dead center on that palm tree, and it brings our eye around and brings in these palms and the moon. We could also flip that a little bit more. I think it comes around another way. Yeah, there we go. From the top down. Either way, it sweeps in and brings in other elements that are important to this image, including the moon. This is Arches National Park in Utah. We've got the arch with the moon up here. Let's get our spiral going here. Put them right there on the arch. Ideally, might be better right in the center there, but it still catches your eye there where it should be, and brings in the moon and the sky and the remainder of that formation. Now let's see this guy here. This is a sandhill crane walking at sunset up on Little Lake Kerr up in. Let's see what we got for spiral here. Oops. And we're going to flip that around. There you go. So we got the crane's head right there in the center of the spiral, and a nice movement here, capturing the lake and everything around it. There's another spiral, focusing on the crane there, or the heron. There we go. So we got the heron right there in the center of the spiral, capturing all that neat tree there, the live oak tree with the twisting limbs and branches, and we've got kind of a leading line out of the frame here with the water going out. Let's see what else we got. Get some leading lines here. We looked at a couple. Here's another one. This is Slim Shady Trail in Sedona, Arizona, and you can see the trail here. The hiking trail begins, and that's a leading line that brings us out, and we can imagine ourselves continuing to follow that trail up into the rocks and the mountain formations here. Here's a leading line with the pier over at the Atlantic, and it's pointing Flagler Beach is where this is, and the leading line of that pier is just pointing right out to the sun. And I think we might have, let's see what we got here, otherwise. Yeah. This is that golden ratio. We're a little bit off on that. So that really leading lines is mainly what we have in this one. Here's another example of leading lines. The rail up here on this pier pointing out to the sunrise water, golden water. You also have repeating patterns with these buoys hung along that rail, and you've got some other repeating patterns with the shadows coming in here from the rail or the post on the other side of that pier. This is an example again of repeating patterns with these oak trees. Repeating, you've got leading lines with the road down here at the bottom pointing to the apex of that structure. This is a very long, this is about a mile long live oak canopy, which is one of the longest ones in the U.S. It's just south of Savannah. It's called Wormslow, I believe, is the mansion, or is the plantation, Wormslow Plantation. Some more leading lines here on a boardwalk going out into the forest. And you can kind of just imagine, walking that, and it was a little bit of drama and mystery as to, well, I wonder what's back in there. Here's a leading line. The highway, the roadway, is leading you off into the distance here, and we'll give you one or two more here on the leading lines. Here's one where we're using a stream of water that's leading your eye back to the Hoodoo structure. This is near Bryce Canyon in Utah. So this water is acting as a leading line. And so we have a rule of third here on this side with that structure being on that, keep on the crop, on that line there. And let's see. Oh, we already did balance, didn't we? Okay. So let's just look at all of them, see if there's any. Oh, this is one with negative space. They get this lone tree out in the field all by itself, and really not much other than a field and a sunrise or a sunset going on over here. But the main subject is sitting out here all by itself. So you got a lot of negative space around here. It's kind of in a minimalist way. Here we filled the frame, pretty much taken up the whole frame with this heron down at the Gulf of Mexico, down near Naples. We've also used the rule of thirds somewhat to put that eye as best we could near that third, that 1/3 line there. Again, these are guidelines. They're never going to be totally perfect. Sometimes they are, but here's a reflection. Gives you that symmetry, this pelican floating on the water with this perfect reflection. And this is an example of framing where Tammy and I, this is my wife and I, on a hike in Ohio, and I saw this dead tree here that had kind of arched over the pathway, and I thought, wow, what a great place to get a photo and framed under this. So this is framing here, and it really highlights the subject underneath of it. Another example of framing. This is a much bigger structure. This is a beautiful waterfall in North Carolina, not too far from Asheville, but you can see the waterfall, and the stream below it is framed by the forest, the trees. Some leading lines here is the trails, comm trails from the airplanes, and also the highlighted sands from the beach. And you see off in the distance the pier that all of this seems to be kind of pointing towards. So I think we've given you some pretty good examples. Here's another fill the frame. We're also rule of thirds. The eye is often one of the most important structures of an animal or a person. So we try to get that eye, if we can, in that intersection of those two 1/3 lines. I don't think we have a spiral. Let's put that back. flip that around. Yeah, we missed on the spiral just by a little bit there, so that's okay. What else we got here? Fill the frame. This is an Anhinga. Took that from my kayak on Silver Springs River in the Ocala area. And I believe we also have a rule of thirds on this guy. Yeah, you can see his eye and is right on that 1/3 line there. So hopefully that's given you some good examples of how you can use these different techniques in your composition to add drama, to lead the eye, tell your story. The suggestion was on your next outing, pick one of these. Rule of thirds is probably the easiest one to start with if you haven't been using that already. If you have, maybe you want to try moving up to the golden spiral. The thing I like about Lightroom is it does have those overlays so that I can come back and crop them into that golden spiral. I try to replicate that in my viewfinder, but I don't have an overlay in the viewfinder, so I have to kind of estimate where that's going to end up, and then I can finalize that in my cropping. So, or leading lines. Go look for leading lines; they're everywhere, and practice with that. Or fill the frame if you like to take pictures of flowers. Things like that. Those are great ways to fill the frame, get it up close, and get, sometimes these flowers are pretty small, so you got to fill the frame with them by getting up close, maybe putting it in your macro function. So hopefully this is helpful, and we'll try to do some more of this later. So thanks for your attention, and we'll talk to you soon.